The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello everybody and welcome back to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm Phil Kirkbride and today joined by Sam Carroll and Chris Beesley as we chew the fat for all the major talking points at Goodison Park in this winter break. Of course, Carlo Ancelotti giving the Blues players 5 days off, but they signed off for that well-earned rest with a 3-1 victory over Crystal Palace that took the Blues 7th and keeps up with the momentum at this late charge for European qualification. We will reflect on the Palace win and how it was achieved. Plus, we will talk about Jordan Pickford, who gave a very strong interview after the game. I'm sure you've read it on our website. We will discuss what he had to say. Plus, what should Everton do at right back in the summer? Piece we wrote today about Jonjoe Kenny and how Everton are closely monitoring his loan at Schalke. But of course, the decision over his future involves many other people, Coleman and Sidibe, and of course the new manager as well. So we will talk all about that. But we'll start with Palace as we didn't get the chance to pod any earlier this week. Hard fought in the end, Bees. But we were worthy winners though, weren't we, all told?
In the end, yeah, it was a strange one. At 1-0, Everton looked almost totally in control, but then they started the second half a bit sluggish. But even so, the equaliser just totally came out of nothing. Benteke, who hadn't scored all season. I mean, we'll touch on it later. Soft shot under Pickford's body, 1-1. But yeah, like you said, it was a pivotal moment, though. I thought that when Richarlison did score that goal, because Everton were under the cosh at that moment. Pickford had gone on and made a good save to deny Benteke a second. Sorry, that was that just after the goal. Yeah, but it was a period when Palace were on top. So for Richarlison to just go down the other end and to score in the manner that he did, that was a big thing. But yeah, they're looking convincing, the fact that they can have those setbacks within games. Whether it's 2-0 down at Watford, you don't want that too often happening in games like that. But yeah, the fact that when they are on the back foot, they can claw themselves back into the games where they don't seem to have that fragility that they'd had in the recent past.
Sam, what struck me about Saturday and put it in one of our pieces, we moved 7th, and the last time, of course, we finished 7th to qualify for Europe was 2017, the first season of Koeman. And for me, there were shades of that run-in with Koeman where we didn't always play brilliantly, but there was just an inevitability and a belief about the team as we kind of just marched to 7th with room to spare. And of course, it's doubtful that we will do that this time. It'll be much tighter if we do qualify for the Europa League. But did you get a sense that there was any reminder of that team from 2.5 years ago?
Yeah, I think it's definitely that sense of mentality change, and mentality has been spoken about so often at Everton this season, and often in a negative light. And I think, under Marco, there was, it happens to any team that aren't playing with confidence and aren't getting results. But any time you're the team and score, you'd just be like, well, that's it, we've lost, it's over, or we certainly won't win. And there was that stat that was obviously widely doing the round at the time when Marco got sacked, that we never came from behind to win a game under him, and there was just that air of inevitability. But as B is saying, it was a bit of a tricky time. Strange, really, because at half time we seemed quite settled and quite on top, and Carl probably admit that we were terrible for the first 5, 10, 15 minutes of the second half. But now, as you're saying, that there's a real strong parallel with that Koeman season of we're just getting the results, aren't they? And you think just the ones that come to the top of my head straight away under Ancelotti, and you've got the Burnley game, his first game at Goodison, we kept plugging away, we got that goal. Newcastle away where they equalised, but we kept going and got the winner. And again there, Richarlison almost taking on the Lukaku mantle of dragging us towards Europe with that's the kind of raw power he possesses, isn't he? It was like it was pure street footy, wasn't it? That goal, there was no skill, there was no flicks and tricks. It was just straight power, wasn't it? And running down the field and scoring that goal, and it was nice to see Calvert-Lewin as well get another one at the end. So yeah, I think there's definitely an air of belief, and what I think is quite exciting now is that looking at that game in the context of the next couple of fixtures, which is Arsenal away and Manchester United at home. We'll let you use that belief. This is probably the worst Arsenal team you're going to have faced in a long time at the Emirates, and the same maybe for Manchester United, a team that we beat comfortably 4-0 last season. So if we're the team in the ascendancy at the moment, we're going to be playing them more confident than those two teams, more settled than those two teams. And you get 2 results there, and the landscape of the season changes even more dramatically than we think it has right now.
Bees, on last week's pod, we talked about how many times had we all watched the winner at Watford. How many times do you think people have been watching Richarlison's goal? Because Preno, who's not in today's pod, said to me on Sunday, he thinks it's his favourite goal of the season.
All right. It was a lovely view. I know obviously you two were at the game itself, but we were back here in the office, and it was a great view from the cameras of the goal, quite high up, and also panoramic of Goodison, just seeing how it unfolded. It was a great moment, and it was like you say, not necessarily skill or finesse, but pure power. I must also say, actually, the opening goal as well was great because you knew it was going to happen. When you saw that cross come in from Walcott and the way that Bernard took it at the back post, you just knew that was going to be 1-0. So a couple of really enjoyable goals. And on the flip side of that, Calvert-Lewin's just a tap-in, but that's great because we're saying about Calvert-Lewin, he's now got that poacher's instinct in and around the 6-yard box. So, 3 different goals, but all enjoyable in their own different ways.
The atmosphere, obviously, with it being like a half 12 kickoff, wasn't at its best, but there was just something about that goal, wasn't it? Like, I think even me and you had a little celebration when it went in, because you don't often see that type of goal very often, do you? And it just kind of came in the blink of an eye. And I also think from the couple of times I've watched it back, and it's gone a little bit under the radar, is Calvert-Lewin winning that initial little header. It's a dead ball that it's going nowhere. It's a loose ball, and what a kind of a decision. And obviously you've got to track it back to Dunk, but that kind of partnership of Richarlison and Calvert-Lewin, it's just working at the moment, isn't it? And it's helping that Calvert-Lewin's got the confidence to score goals. He told me after the game, now he's disappointed when he goes out on the pitch and doesn't score. And, to think that this was a player who only scored 6 Premier League goals in the entire of last season, what a kind of change he's had, and what a second half to the season he's having. But what I do love about Richarlison is he can just do it all. And I think you could tell him to go and play left back, and he'd probably be one of the best players on the pitch. And what manager wouldn't want a player who can score a goal out of nothing like that?
In putting that goal into context, I was just thinking, is there anybody else in the Everton squad who could have picked the ball up where Richarlison did and single-handedly turned it into a goal? And that's not a criticism of the other players. I think I'm just trying to highlight how special this lad is. Maybe certainly the physical attributes he got, you'd like to think maybe once he gets a little bit more confidence behind him, that's kind of what we've brought Moise Keane in for. But apart from that, at the moment, there's no one of that profile. But at the same time, I don't think there's many players of that profile currently in the Premier League. He has just got something about him at the moment, and he almost reminds me a little bit of Mane at Liverpool, like a lot of power and a lot of kind of confidence in his own ability, and with Richarlison now, it certainly seems what I'm also liking about him this season. There's been a few times there where he could have maybe looked for the other option, but he's certainly got that ruthless streak. I think he fancies himself as a central striker, and he's certainly got the finish to boot, because that goal, the goal against Brighton this season, the couple against Brighton last season, Wolves on his debut, he takes the hard chances, doesn't he? You can't knock him. He doesn't often score the easy ones. No, I think he's an absolutely phenomenal player for this football club. B's Royal Blue podcast favourite, Gav Buckland, said to me as I turned round after the goal, in a period where Richarlison was showing his quality. He said the 2 best players in the Premier League outside of the established top 4, 5, if you like, were on the pitch at the moment. Richarlison and Wilfried Zaha. Would you agree that Richarlison has to be talked about in that bracket?
Yeah, I think you could say this season, obviously we follow Everton's fortunes a lot more closely than Crystal Palace's, but I think that Richarlison has done more sort of highlight real moments like that this season than I can recall Zaha doing. I mean, it was widely recognised. We talked about in the previous podcast when there was those rumours of Zaha coming to Everton last season, that he was supposedly the best player outside those elite group of clubs. But the way Richarlison's come on, I think you just want to have that little bit more consistency with him at times. Sometimes he blows hot and cold, but I mean, he's having to do has been for a long time 2 different kind of roles. He's obviously with the 4-4-2 now. He does tend to be as part of a strike pairing with Calvert-Lewin, but he spent a lot of the time under the previous regime either alternating between a central striking role on the wing. But yeah, he's certainly one of the premier talents outside those established big six, and hence, whether we like it or not, why there are at times speculation linking him with other clubs with greater resources.
So 13 league goals for Richarlison last season, 13 for Sigurdsson last season. Calvert-Lewin's got 11, so you would think, very realistic that he will match or even go past last season's top scorer tally. What should Richarlison be aiming for in the final 12 games?
I think 15 plus. I think that's achievable. I think if he can get to that now, then what an incredible 2 seasons he's had. I don't know whether people might say for the amount of money you've paid for him, should he be looking at 15, 20? 15 would still be a brilliant kind of tally to finish on. But I just think for a young lad, it's consistency, isn't it? And I think you've also got to remember he started the season reasonably slowly in terms of goals as well. And Calvert-Lewin kind of did a little bit as well. So I think if both of them can aim for around that 15 mark, then surely one of them next season can kick on and go towards 20. And it's been a long time since Everton have had a consistent 15 to 20 goal a season striker, isn't it? We haven't had that since Ron. We've been searching for it, and how incredible would it be if kind of it had been Calvert-Lewin all along, that we were just waiting to kick on. So Richarlison next season, I think for how old he's going to be, I definitely expect him to head towards that 20 category. So I think this season, Ancelotti and Richarlison himself will probably just want to keep getting minutes under his belt and keep scoring goals and keep that confidence flowing, because as you were saying, I don't think there's many players outside that top 4, that top 6 that have a player like Richarlison and how important he is to Everton at the moment. And you've got to remember he's been doing this in 2 pretty difficult seasons for the club. We had a long, difficult stretch under Silva last season. We've had a change of manager this year. His mentor, and he's playing, still possibly playing the best football of his Everton career. So staggering, really, and no surprise that we've already now started having these kind of early rumblings of other teams, of bigger teams wanting them, because I'm 100% certain that won't be the last we hear of teams interested.
Sadly not. Bees, story we carried initially Sunday evening and then updated for Monday morning. Due to results, we weren't certain how the results were going to go, but Brazil will be playing in the Olympics. Of course, Richarlison will be part of the Brazilian squad for the Copa America. It's come around again. The Chelsea have changed the schedule, so it's come around 12 months. Obviously, Brazil defending champions, Richarlison scoring a penalty in the final last summer. He will be, of course, we imagine, in that squad. But then it's been suggested in an interview that he gave to the Daily Mail on the weekend that he could be, or has made it known that he wants to be available for the Olympics in Tokyo. I asked Carlo Ancelotti after the game on Saturday what he thought of that, and he said, "Look, it's way off. I haven't really given it much consideration." But to paraphrase his response, he said, "We're going to have to talk to Brazil." Brackets. I don't want this to happen because, of course, the tournament at the Olympics runs until the opening date of the Premier League season. Now, do you think Everton have got an issue on their hands, given our friends across the desk who cover Liverpool tell me reliably that Mo Salah looks like possibly would be going into the Egypt squad, and Minamino, if I've pronounced that correct, is almost a cert to play for Japan. Do we have a problem on the horizon?
We certainly do. If there's a double tournament, and that you say that with the Copa America as well, but the Olympics, whether we like it or not, is par for the course, certainly with the younger players. And it's interesting that some of the older ones, like Salah, who would be an overage player, is obviously so keen to take part, it seems. But I think it's primarily an under-23s tournament, the Olympic football. I remember when it was here in the UK, in London back in 2012, went to quite a few of the games up at Old Trafford myself. young Neymar was playing for Brazil. Look what he's gone on and achieved.
So that's a really good point, because it's that part of the problem, because it's maybe for Brazilian players, it's quite a well-trodden path, and Richarlison may look at Neymar now as a senior member of the Brazil squad and somebody he looks up to and go, well, he went and did it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I think it's a big deal. It never really has at all in the UK, but partly because I think until London 2012, we didn't really have a team. We had that combined UK Team GB for that games, just because as the host nation, I think that we're expected to take part. But yeah, because it is GB rather than the England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland that we're used to in football, never really had sort of much time for Olympic football. But yeah, a lot of these countries, it is a big deal. I think even someone like a young Idrissa Gueye was playing for Senegal in that tournament as well. Sadio Mane again across the flat possibly. It's certainly for the younger players like Richarlison, that is a big deal, and I'm sure he'll be very keen to take part. So, as much as we don't like it, I guess that's always going to be a realistic headache for Carlo Ancelotti going into the season, because, like you say, with it only finishing late as well, you'd imagine Brazil would have a fair chance of going deep into the tournament. Perhaps towards the latter stages, they'll be out for a medal. So yeah, I mean, it's always the risk that you run.
Sam, can Richarlison cope with? Undoubtedly, he's got the enthusiasm and the desire, and what he plays with the pain barrier. So we know he would, in many ways, have no issue playing a Copa America and then going straight into an Olympics. But for a player that's so important to the club, can we really allow him to play both in the summer?
Not really, no, because I think what you're forgetting is it's not just that kind of initial impact, is it? By this time next season, so the end of 2021, yeah, he'll have then basically played 2 years of unbroken football, won't he? He won't have had that chance. And I just think on a young lad's body like that, there's just no way it'll happen in terms of he either picks up an injury, gets fatigued, or just the serious risk of just total burnout. And then for a few weeks in the summer, for a few weeks of a summer tournament, then Everton kind of lose their best player for large chunks of the season. So that's obviously going to be Everton's argument, but at the same time, it is just such a difficult position that kind of they've been thrown into, really, isn't it? I think we all remember that video of him when he was selected for, I think it might have been the last Copa America, and all his family were watching the TV. He's got a real enthusiasm, a real love of playing for his country, obviously like any young lad, but also then the South Americans, I think, really take these kind of tournaments seriously as well. And the Olympics, obviously, as Bees said, they won the last one in 2016 in Brazil. So the likelihood is that they're at least getting to the latter stages. So it's just so difficult. If I was Everton, I don't know, I'd be tempted to just put my foot down and just say, well, you're not going. You're our player and you're not going. But I'd imagine the matter is a little bit more complicated than that.
Yes, I'm sure it'd be a bit more diplomatic conversation. But as we say, his enthusiasm to play for his country is part of what his enthusiasm to play football is part of what makes him and sets him apart, isn't it? So hopefully there could be an amicable solution to that. Okay, moving on. Jordan Pickford coming obviously out of the game. Crystal Palace's equaliser, as Chris mentioned earlier, was somewhat soft. A shot low, close to Jordan Pickford's body. His near post was allowed to squirm under him, and Palace equalised. Benteke scoring for the first time in 34 Premier League games and drawing Palace level. He did, of course, Jordan Pickford pull out an exceptional save thereafter when the scores were 2-1 after Richarlison. Put the Blues back in front. Quite remarkable reflex save from the same player to keep the lead intact. But of course, he had the bit between his teeth when he came through the mix zone afterwards and gave an interview to the media, where he spoke about the criticism he gets at all levels from all media and fans, or punters as he referred to them as. Sam, has Jordan got a point, or does he need to accept that being criticised as a Premier League player in a high profile in the spotlight at a club the size of Everton's and playing for his national team is just par for the course, really?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we all make mistakes in work, and not a lot of us have it kind of amplified to the point that the footballers do and the Pickford does. And obviously probably starting from that game at Anfield last season up until now, he has unfortunately made a few mistakes which have been picked up on because they were kind of match defining mistakes, and he has been quite unfortunate in that. I think that other goalkeepers and other top goalkeepers, sometimes when you watch them, they just have that little bit of luck where they might spill one, the defender clears it, or they just get away with them. And unfortunately at the moment, Pickford has got the bad habit of not getting away with them and them costing goals, and a lot of the time they cost important goals. And it was a strange one after the game for him to kind of maybe give that interview because we'd won, but he obviously came out with, as you said, the bit between his teeth to kind of give that strong an interview. And
something he wanted to get off his chest, clearly.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. He came out, didn't he, fully with the intention to say that, and judging by the things he said, especially kind of pinpointing Gary Neville and other pundits, was something that had obviously been on his mind a little bit. And I just think it's just frustrating with Jordan sometimes, because he had something similar last season where he had the kind of Liverpool error and then the game at Newcastle, and there was a lot of talk around him, and then he was pretty much perfect until the end of the season, didn't make no mistakes. We started off this season defensively pretty solidly. I think he kept a clean sheet on the opening day.
And was vital in his keeping a clean sheet.
Yeah, had a really good game. And then Watford, it was another clean sheet, wasn't it? So he started strongly, and it had all kind of just blown over a little bit. But now again, when you make those errors, you've kind of just got to accept there will be criticism, and you do just have to put your head down, because at the moment, I do think for the first time since those World Cup heroics, is England places in a little bit of doubt. But first and foremost, he's got to be performing for Everton, and I just think sometimes it's that mentality side of the game that's letting him down, because no one doubts he has definitely won Everton more points than he's lost them since he signed, and he's made some incredible saves, and I still think he's a really important player for Everton, and someone that is going to be our goalkeeper for the next 10 years. But he's got to start looking at himself, and you can't keep pointing the fingers at pundits and critics and the newspapers and the media, because at the end of the day, it's now down to him to stop making those mistakes on such a consistent basis. Every goalkeeper's going to make them every now and again, but we need Pickford to be as consistent as can be now if we are going to push towards the Europa League.
But understandably, whenever Pickford or any goalkeeper makes a mistake, it creates a debate among supporters about whether the goalkeeper still should be the club's number one, whether he's suitable, could we do better, etc., etc. How do you feel? My personal opinion is, and I agree with Sam, Jordan Pickford wins us more points than he costs us. Yeah. It was a mistake. I know he said there was mitigation, got his studs. I don't buy the mitigation particularly. I think he should have saved it regardless of goalkeeper of his ability. Yeah. But I think on the whole, in the 2.5, nearly 3 seasons he's been with us, he's been one of our best players. I think he's been a very, very good signing, and the more he matures, and I think that's the key, he needs to mature, and he will do, he will become an even better goalkeeper. Do you have any issue with Jordan Pickford as our number one? And forget the England stuff for now, because we're not really interested, are we?
I think that is part of the problem, but no, for Everton, I think that Everton have got a stronger goalkeeper as Everton could get, and I think it would cost them a lot of money to replace him with someone else. So I'm very much of the same thought that the both of you two, that Jordan Pickford is good for Everton, and Everton are good for Jordan Pickford, and he should stay as Everton's number one. But I think it is those outside influences, the fact that he is England's number one, which is why there is so much scrutiny. If he wasn't England's number one, I mean, Evertonians would be disappointed with that, but ultimately that didn't cost Everton. At the weekend, they came back and they won the game 3-1. But it's because he's England's number one, and it's new territory for Everton. Everton, I've said before on this podcast, at risk of repeating myself, it is the first time that Everton have had an established England number one with them. Only 3 other keepers been capped for England while with Everton, and they've never really been a long time number one. So certainly in where we are now, it's always been a case for many years, but in 2020 with the media scrutiny the way it is now, with the England national team, obviously Gareth Southgate was there in the crowd at Goodison Park. He didn't have many other options at the weekend, but there he was watching. That's where I think the pressure comes from, because people are saying, well, it should be X or it should be Y, or whether that's Henderson or Pope or whoever else is doing whatever at other clubs. That's why his mistakes are amplified. But yeah, I do think that he should be doing better at times. That's only because we know how good he is, and the fact that a couple of minutes later he pulls out that worldie and stops Benteke anyway. Without spoiling what we've got coming on the horizon, obviously, as you both know, I spoke to Neville Southall this week, and we'll be going with that story at the weekend. He's got his
brilliant
ideas.
stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
If you're listening, make sure you check that out at the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, best keeper in the world in his pomp, best keeper Everton ever had. So he's got some really interesting views about the way Jordan can improve and what he needs to do with the critics. But my own personal take is that, he should be doing better at times. It just seems to be a lack of concentration, because we know physically, he's got those attributes to pull off those great saves, but whether it's Newcastle last season, when his head went, or whatever happened in those last moments at Anfield last season, there just seems to be moments when the concentration goes, because we all know technically there's no reason in the world why he shouldn't have stopped that daisy cutter from Benteke, but somehow it slipped through. So I think that if he can just get his head right, he's got the attributes to be a great keeper.
And look, Sam, regular podcast listeners know we review for your previews with Everton's Academy. But on a serious note, goalkeeping better than any of us. What is it about Jordan Pickford that makes him, in your opinion, an elite level goalkeeper or world class goalkeeper, or I
think the one thing that always sticks with me is I always remember on his debut against Stoke, when obviously Rooney scored that header, and he hadn't really had nothing to do, and then in the last minute, I don't know if you remember it, but someone hit an absolute banger, which
it may have been Shaqiri.
Yeah, so I've got Shaqiri in my head, and as soon as he hit it, I just kind of looked away and was just like, that's 1-1, like that's a goal, and just produced an unbelievable kind of save, and for me that is what he's all about. He is a brilliant shot stopper, and he's a natural shot stopper, and that is just genuinely something that you don't coach that. You're born with that, or just a really natural ability to do those kinds of things. And even in that first couple of seasons as well, from a couple of years of Howard and towards the end, certainly Robles, we hadn't really had a keeper who I felt like was quite commanding. And even for a young lad, when you watched him, he's certainly got a presence, and he's certainly not scared of telling the people in front of him what he thinks, and I do generally think then he's got the right mix of ability and the attitude, because he believes in himself and he's got that confidence. And it is just, I think, the word you've used to just sum him up perfectly is his maturity and how he matures in the next couple of years, isn't it? Because certainly I wouldn't say there's many better shot stoppers than him in the Premier League. He's got quite often his distribution is up there, isn't he? We've all seen him pull a few passes out, and his long kicking is good, his throwing's good.
And sorry to interrupt. Sometimes one of the criticism is that his kicking can sometimes go awry, sometimes a bit erratic. Maybe is he sometimes a victim of his own ambition, because we all know how good he can be in distributing the ball, and we've seen some unbelievable passes that he's produced. Do you think as part of his learning, does he sometimes have to rein it in and sometimes not have to be as ambitious as he sometimes is, and try for those passes that have got a slim percentage chance of coming off?
Yeah, and that's part of it, isn't it? And I think game management is certainly sometimes again can work on it in that sense that sometimes it doesn't have to be a chipped pass out wide, or when you've got one of the best headers of the ball probably in the world right now in Dominic Calvert-Lewin up front. Sometimes it can do that, and it is what it is, isn't it? But certainly it's always nice to see him do a little ball to Dean or to Coleman or to whoever's playing right back, and he has got in his locker. But as you're saying, the other thing you've got to think about sometimes is, certainly under Silva, it felt like that was something he was being asked to do, wasn't it? And maybe sometimes if it's not quite on, but he's thinking in the back of my mind, well, I've been asked to do it, and I'm going to go for it. But yeah, Ancelotti's got faith in him, hasn't he? And he said that pretty early on when there was rumours that he was in the market for a goalkeeper. But it looks like he's got faith in him. And he's seemingly, it seems like he's highly thought of, by Alan Kelly as well, from some of the things he said on him in the past. So I think now it is just about him getting to the end of the season, not making any more errors that people are going to kind of have his name in the newspaper and that about, because obviously that's not a nice feeling, especially with the Euros coming up, and if he can keep that jersey and have a strong summer, then I think Everton have got a top keeper for many years to come.
Speaking about what Marcel Silva asked him to do with the ball at his feet, Allardyce used to just tell him to get rid of it as far and as long as possible. I've missed those days, don't we? Moving on, a conversation that we were having mid-game in the press box, Chris. as he was brought on, albeit delayed because he forgot to put on his sock. It's getting to the point now. We're only 2.5, 3 months of the season left. Everton took Djibril Sidibe on loan from AS Monaco with the option to buy him for around £12.7 million. Would you keep him?
I don't know if I would, but that's not any slight to Sidibe, who's done well. It's just like, as you mentioned earlier, the fact that Jonjoe Kenny has also done very well at Schalke. So do you sacrifice this young lad? Actually mentioned to Phil earlier this morning, someone had said on Twitter, if Everton were to sign a 22-year-old right-back from possibly Champions League bound Schalke this summer, everyone would be like, oh, well, that's a promising sign.
Real buzz, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so the fact that you've already got somebody like that on the books, homegrown hero in Jonjoe Kenny chomping at the bit to come back, that would be my doubt. I mean, unless you go radical and you say, well, thank you for all you've done, Seamus, Coleman, but move you on and have Sidibe and Kenny as the two options. Yeah, I think it's very much up for grabs. But I think the whole Kenny factor puts a big question mark over Sidibe, given that he's the only one of those three options which isn't currently an Everton player permanently. I guess there's so much for Carlo to consider in that. Does he want to have a look at Jonjoe first before he even makes that decision? But can he afford to do that in that Sidibe might turn around and say, well, I'm going to go somewhere else now?
And you make a very good point, Chris. Does Carlo and Everton, is there enough time in competitive situations for Carlo to have a proper look at Jonjoe? You know, he may have the opportunity to go to Germany between now and the end of the season, maybe. And then after that, he's got him at training at the start of July at Finch Farm. And you know, pre-season will start sort of early July, mid-July, the games, but then they're friendly games. Are you getting a real gauge? Yeah. Do you think he has to lean on the advice of Brands and the recruitment department more for this decision?
I'm sure it will be a big factor. I think the whole reason that Jonjoe Kenny was sent out on loan would not be because Everton were just trying to make a few quid on him. No. They were obviously thinking, well, we've still got Seamus Coleman here as the established right back, as the club captain. So we need to see what Jonjoe's like for a full season, albeit in German football, as it turned out, playing week in, week out at the highest level, with the idea that he can eventually come back and become first choice right back, at least challenge to be first choice right back. Everton, yes, so it may be that Carlo speaks to Marcel Brands and say, where do you think he's at? What's your idea in this right back situation? Because I think arguably in any individual area of the pitch currently, it's the one position which is most up for grabs, is the most question marks about this summer, in that you've got three very good players there. That, I mean, nobody's letting anyone down there. Three different stages of their career. Seamus Coleman, who's been there, done it all, as good as any right back Everton have ever had, totally revolutionised the position, but he had that nasty injury, isn't what he was, but then his presence within the dressing room. You got Djibril Sidibe sort of supposedly at the peak of his powers, mid-career there, and then somebody like Jonjoe Kenny who's coming through in the promise for the future. So yeah, it's difficult because you can't kind of keep one of them waiting and say, well, let's have a look at Jonjoe Kenny, or you just wait there for a couple of weeks for DB. You've got to work fast. So yeah, it may be a case that it's not entirely one that Carlo does on his own. That he does look, see how Jonjoe's got on, look see what Marcel Brand's idea is. I mean, we don't even know what Sidibe's thoughts are. I mean, he's saying all the right things, of course, but who knows? He may think, well, okay, it's been decent at Everton, but go and do something else next season.
French for decent, Sam, any idea?
not quite sure.
We're basing this discussion, Sam, on 2 players per position, which is the very loose but fairly applicable rule to squad building, 23-man squad. As we sit here now, we'll put you on the spot. What's your 2 for the start of next season?
It's a tough one, isn't it?
Well, it is, isn't it? Yeah. This is the thing. It's so difficult.
It is just there's just too many factors in there. I think at the moment to have a clear say right now. You know, for all intents and purposes, Kenny is having a brilliant time in Schalke, and you know, judging by your piece today, Everton have got all the kind of data and widgets they need to kind of monitor that. So you know, which is obviously good. But then will Ancelotti make a decision based on what Brands has seen, what the data say? He's probably gonna, you know, he's long enough in the tooth to probably want come back, isn't he, and have a look? But then does that leave it too late if you wait until pre-season to then make these decisions? And would it be too late to make a decision on Sidibe? You know, and there's so much that could go wrong as well, isn't there? You know, at the end of the day, if you said, right, we're going to go with Coleman, we're going to sign Sidibe, we'll have them two, we'll sell Kenny, and then Kenny goes on to continue blossoming at Schalke, and in a few years he's a £40 million right back that we've let slip between our fingers, then that's difficult. But at the same time, then you could go, right, he's been brilliant, bring him back. He might not have the same effect. So for me, it's just so difficult at the moment.
And is, I mean this in the most complimentary term, is Coleman complicating matters? Because Coleman, as Bees alluded to, is no longer guaranteed first choice. It's very much, you know, every couple of weeks it seems to change, and there's a rotation, and we know Carlo is kind of keen on certain elements of rotation anyway. But it was like that last season when him and Kenny. Is it because he's club captain and he's probably a real influence, really good around the place, ultra professional, you know, a shining light for the younger players? Does that complicate matters because he brings all of that to the club and the squad, as well as being a dependable right back in the Premier League, albeit somebody who's not at the peak of his powers?
Yeah, and that the other thing is that, you know, you know what you're getting from Seamus, isn't it? You know that, you know, even his performance against Crystal Palace, you know, in the first half forced Wilfried Zaha to switch flanks. And it's probably not that many defenders gonna do that, but at the same time he has just lost that little yard of pace, hasn't he? And that little spark that made him, you know, one of Europe's best right backs for such a long period of time. I feel like Coleman is kind of just the safe option at the moment, isn't it? And that's not a bad thing.
I just think you look at how much value the club placed in handing Leighton Baines a new 1-year deal, you know, rather than saying to Anthony Robinson, right, you come in, and, you know, and I just wonder whether there's a similar thought process with Seamus, and that's why 3-2 doesn't go. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be honest, the more you talk about it, the more it's probably going to be the most interesting, or one of the most interesting subplots of Everton's summer. But right now, I think it's bordering on the impossible to say what they're going to do. I think they could do any of that, and even I still think they could even go out and buy another right back and complicate things even more. And, you know, they could have an alternative kind of identified who Ancelotti really likes and says, I want him to be my first choice. And then, you know, it's 3 names then that you have to decide who fights for that place. So, you know, there's just so much that can happen.
Further muddy in the waters, Chris, is there any... Do any of the conversations that Marcel, Carlo and the team have centre around the fact that Sidibe has operated as a right winger fairly admirably this season? Now I know, you know, he would not be the answer. You know, the club have made it clear that a right winger is something they will be looking at, and I'm not saying that we sign him for that position, but his versatility, is that another issue that complicates this?
No.
Okay.
He's done admirably. He's done a good job on that right hand side of the midfield, but that's just a necessity of the situation, okay. I believe. So I don't think, in regards to whether you're going to sign him for the club or not, because you say, okay, we'll have those two, Coleman and Kenny as the 2 right backs, and Sidibe's an alternative on the right hand side of midfield. No, I mean, Cuco Martina did an admirable job at times at left back in the season, and he had to play that. I think he got a couple of assists on his left peg as well, the equivalent of Baines getting a couple on his right. So, Sidibe's done really well when he's been called upon. Apart from that bizarre incident when he obviously wasn't ready on Saturday, which I think, never mind.
We've all forgot to put a sock on.
Carlo's known for raising an eyebrow. I'm sure he raised an eyebrow at that particular moment.
Yeah,
but
he threw his hands up, didn't he?
He's done very well when called upon right in the midfield. But no, I would hope that going forward that Everton were identifying more natural right wingers.
Indeed, one to debate for the coming months, no doubt, because we can't really seem to agree on a solution. And over to you, Marcel and Carlo, to make that call, because it will not be an easy one. Just before we wrap up, of course, the players on winter breaks and have jetted to all manner of places around the world. Chaps, if you were on a winter break, where would you go?
I think Davies and Calvert-Lewin.
You can't say the Black Horse. You've got to get on a plane.
I'll start there. Get picked up from there to the airport. I think they've had the right idea going to America.
Yeah.
Go and smash Vegas' head in for a week. That'd be a decent little break, wouldn't it? Wouldn't be wearing some of the clobber I've seen though.
Right, yeah.
Moist Keane.
Yeah.
Poor.
Some fashion statements being made, Bees.
Yeah, what do you want me, Everton Dars response here to?
Where would you go? You're a well-travelled gent.
Yeah,
Chris,
I've
where
already
would you
been
go?
on my own winter break. I've actually had one. It wasn't it didn't correlate with Everton's break, but yeah, I've been just come back from with 2 for the price of 1. Went to Vienna and flew in a second capital city for the price of 1 in Bratislava as well.
There you go.
I've already had my winter break. So there you go.
The cultural choice.
What about you?
I just stay Finch fan. Ultimate pro. Good stuff, chaps. Right, we will wrap it up there. A little teaser, we are recording a special podcast at the end of the week, which we'll put out probably on Friday. Sam and I will be sitting down with David Unsworth to discuss all things academy and under 23, so very much looking forward to that, and we'll bring you that Friday probably or over the weekend. Chaps, thanks for your company. Good stuff as always, and thank you very much for listening. This has been the Royal Blue Podcast.
The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.